Hello, everybody. My name's Milan Starcic. Welcome to Freedom Rising, a podcast dedicated to empowering individuals on the journey to personal growth, lasting serenity, and freedom from addiction. Tune in and join the movement. Your journey to freedom starts here. We neither represent, promote, or demote any 12-step program or organization. We are merely souls on the path of recovery with the desire to expand our lives and experiences and share them with you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 193rd or 4th. Whoa. Where are we at, man? I feel lost. I normally have everything written down here.
I'm proud of us.
So yeah, let's see where we are. I don't want to miss. That's the 193rd episode here today.
Wow.
And I'm sitting with Andrew Normand and JJ from West Virginia. And today's topic is grace in the gray areas. Andrew, would you like to share what this means to you and why you chose this topic for us
I
today?
would love to. I would love to. JJ, good to see you, man. Love you.
Good to
Thank
see
you for
both of you. Love you
thank you.
both.
Thank you for yesterday. You helped me out
Mm.
yesterday, man, and I really appreciate that therapeutic value, man. So this is a good one. Grace in the gray areas. I came up with this a couple of weeks ago. I'm glad all decided to hop on and do it. A lot of layers to it for me. Um, before I got here, just the word grace by itself, I didn't know what grace really meant. I thought it was honestly, I thought it was like a religious thing. I thought it was only meant for like religious people. I thought religious people used that term. Um, by doing good things in a religious fashion, right? And as it comes full circle and it's about, grace is about receiving something that I didn't deserve, but I desperately needed, right? That's where it hits home for me is that grace word is me getting something that I desperately needed and I felt like I didn't deserve it. And then it comes into the gray areas, right? Before I got here, there were no gray areas. I mean, I really started thinking about it and thinking about it really hard last night, and everything was black and white for me. You know what I mean? Like, it was all or nothing. I was either the most loved person in the room or I was the most hated person in the room. I was either clean or I was completely dirty using, right? I didn't know how to live like in that middle ground where a lot of us and a lot of people tend to live and thrive in that middle area, right? We don't, that extreme up and down is not where most people tend to live in their normal day. So learning how to live in the middle, in that tension area, that uncomfortable truth that sometimes where you're doing your best, but it's not good enough, right? It doesn't really, you're falling short, but you're doing your best, right? Like that's a tough spot for an addict, for me, because I felt like I should succeed if I'm doing my best, if I'm giving 100% of everything, if I'm still falling short, I felt like there was something wrong with me. And that's where it comes into like giving grace to ourselves, right? You got to have grace for ourselves. Um, and it all comes around with like we were given a lot of this given coming here, so giving grace to that newcomer and trying to welcome them in. What does grace stand for? Gratitude restores a conscious energy. You know what I mean? So grace in the gray areas, man. At first, I didn't even know what the gray areas were, and I wasn't gonna live there. And then having grace in those areas is something that was a foreign to me before I got here. But my predecessors, JJ, y'all showed me so much grace and love and hope, man. Y'all love me back to life, man. That's where we do a lot of our learning is in that gray area. And it's about, letting go of perfection and judgment, especially of myself. And I got to allow love and forgiveness and understanding to come into those areas and in those moments. And it's learning to live in between the space where I don't have all the answers, where I might be uncertain and struggling and afraid to move forward, but I still am willing, right? I still got to be willing in those areas to show up and try again. And to show up, got to show up, man. Got to show up. And that's where we get a lot of that grace is even when we don't want to show up, we show up anyways. And then we're afforded a lot of things when we start doing that time and time again, we get our life back. So I'll pass that to you, JJ. What does that mean to you, bro? Love you.
That was beautiful, brother.
And I love you both, and whenever Milan kicked me the topic, because I asked him, what what are we going to talk about? And it's like my first reaction was, man, I'm glad I asked because, you know, um, it's not a generic topic. And the more I thought about it, like at first I went, whoa, maybe we should change it. But my first thought was to define grace, and then the next thing was to define the gray areas. And this is what's interesting is that, you know, Andrew, uh, his experience was living in the black and white before getting here. And the thinking that I've done this in the conversations I've had, because what I love about my recovery is that, I continue to know that I don't know much. And there's a whole lot more for me to learn than what I know. So asking questions and trying to understand, what are we talking about, grace in the gray areas? Because my thought was that in my addiction, everything was gray. I made a point of making everything gray. There was no black and white, and if there was anything, I'm in the darkness, justifying it, calling it gray when there's nothing gray about it, it's freaking darkness. And, you know, the grace that I attribute first to the higher power, to the creator, um, to explain why I'm still here, why I have been um, graced through so many situations where I've dodged a bullet, and the only explanation that which is why there's a spiritual, I can't deny the spiritual reality of really of life itself. Um, but the fact that I know that there has been prayers for me from my family, from Jump Street, and even I have seen letters to my mom and dad whenever I was born that their friends were praying for us, praying for me, and that's always struck me as to is that part of the reason why somehow I just narrowly missed getting busted or shot and killed or freaking the car wrecks I've been in, why were we not 3/4 of an inch to the left? We'd have hit that tree and I'd have been ejected right through the freaking windshield. It was so close. It took the rear view mirror off and smashed my hand, so and there's just countless times like, is that grace? Oh, I was lucky. I was unlucky. It just begs the question. Um, in my so I don't know where we're going to go with this today, but I just feel that the gray area is serious because I'm thinking grace, undeserved favor. Grace, I understand. It's the gifting of of a pass. It's an opportunity to learn from from almost missing the point to being given another shot. Go ahead, take the test over again. Um, to what are the gray areas and like defining the gray areas as I know them today. I think I want to read this for what help it might give us because in one of my conversations, because I love this, I talked to a number of my friends in recovery, says, give me some input. And some of them just were a little stumped and others went to war. One looked this up and it said, just Googled grace during the gray areas. It's in the Google. Is that wild?
In the
Refers
Google.
in the Google refers to finding forgiveness, compassion, and wisdom when navigating life's complex or morally ambiguous situations where there are no clear black and white answers. It involves applying principles like self-compassion and kindness to others, as well as seeking guidance from scripture and prayer in a spiritual context to make decisions. While integrity to make decisions with integrity. This concept applies to both personal struggles and how one interacts with others in situations where there is no easy right or wrong. I mean, that's loaded for me. Life's complex and morally ambiguous situations, we make them ambiguous a lot of times. I mean, I do, or my observation is, where so often they are black and white, but it's a big debate, man. As it relates to my recovery, like I said before getting into recovery and beginning to learn um, not to stay in those gray areas, because that's what I would do. I mean, I would manipulate and justify my behavior in the world around me, man. In gray areas, and since my last clean date and the commitment to understanding, hey, is this gray or is this black and white? Like the gray area is I might can use a little bit. I might can use a little bit, like, no, I freaking can't use a little bit. No chemicals are going to benefit my life in the least bit. And again, in context, I've had 2 knee operations. I was on oxycodone, but it was with an awareness and with the support system that I took medication as prescribed for the pain in my knee. And there came a crossroads where I started taking it for the emotional pain that was underneath the roof. And so black and white, gray area, man, gray area, right? Oh, my knee hurts a little bit. No, my freaking wife is driving me insane from the kitchen. Is it my knee or is it my headache and my heartache, right? And I probably, being honest, I know because it's the only reason that I reached, a point where being honest and truthful with myself, it's like, no, monkey, it's not your knee pain. It's your head and heart pain from the woman that just freaking yelled from the next room, right? And did I take me a little oxycodone at that point? Very likely, but it was also, because I've experienced the benefits and the beauty and the freedom of being clean, there was like this gray area, man. It was that grace, was that grace that gave me a clarity of mind and thinking. For me, I can consider that grace, because I stepped out of the gray area, which it could have killed me. And living in the gray areas is really worth looking at. That's why the more I talked about this, and where do I find, the opportunity to employ these spiritual principles of forgiveness and letting go of judgment. Andrew said that, to not judge myself, to untie, forgive, and keep moving, and most particularly somebody else. I want us to talk about, there's like God's grace. Like, no one told me, hey, talk to your sponsor and cop to this, right? That was a communication between me and my higher power. But what if Andrew, steps on my foot, or you run through my freaking garden and, at what point do I not choke your ass, that I forgive you? Like, do I give you grace? Um, how do we give each other grace, in a moment of a gray area? Um, I'd like to see how that comes up in our conversations. And uh, as we move on, like I'd like to define gray areas as we shift this, pass this back and forth, whether we enter into some sort of lightning round. And I don't mean that, I just mean to give, to understand what gray areas can you come up with? And because I did able to compile a list to help me understand what the freak we're talking about. Grace in what areas? What are the gray areas? Understand grace. What are the gray areas? And I think I just described one, right? That medication, like freaking crossroads or fork in the road. Am I going to go left or am I going to go wrong? I love you guys. Milan, it's your turn.
Love you.
Woo.
Love you,
Man,
bro.
Yeah, this is probably deeper than one podcast can handle, if we're being honest. Um, so right away when I saw this topic, right, I instantly was like, there's no fucking gray areas. Like, and the reason was is because I'm sitting here in front of the paperwork that I do that two-way prayer to, and I'm looking at a sheet of paper that has honest, pure, unselfish, loving. The four absolutes. So like absolutes don't say slightly gray. They're called the four absolutes. And so I was like, I'm like, am I going to be the jerk face devil's advocate this whole podcast? And I was like, okay. I'm like, obviously it doesn't mean that, right? Like, and if it is saying that, our principles are a gradient versus absolutes, then that leaves a lot of moral interpretation out there to not be practicing them in all our affairs. Like, and so for me, it's like, okay, put that aside for a second, because that can be one interpretation of what that means, and the fact that the grace comes from our higher power when we're not being perfect to still carry us forward in that trajectory. But if we then look about it as like our acceptance of life on life's terms, of people as they are, as us, as the imperfect human beings we are, right? And that gray area, you know, that gray area is us being serene, content, loving, joyous inside situations where we used to necessarily, like for me, I could think for myself, where I used to be intolerant, where I used to have a lack of acceptance, where I used to react with anger, where my response was either provoking guilt or experiencing guilt or both, you know? And and how do we climb out of that if there isn't grace, right? Like the only way we're changing is if we're receiving and giving grace. And then, looking at like learning to love completely, like from that first Corinthians 13, right? If we respond with love when things are unclear, right? Then we're certainly moving forward with grace. And and so how do we keep our faith when life is feeling ambiguous? And what do we do with that? And like there's a lot of points where we can call something gray when we really know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it's real easy to be like, oh, I'm not sure. And we fucking know. We like, the oh, I'm not sure is the addict's response to I don't want to confront the honesty in this, or the impurity, or the way I'm not being loving, like
Yeah.
or like I deserve or should. That creates a pile of gray areas that, like when I hear myself say either one of those things, I'm like, they used to work, buddy, but now, but now that's gone. Like it's just not there. So I think really for me, that's kind of what I got in that, and I'm really interested to see where this goes. I think it's going to be amazing. I really loved what everybody said so far. I love both you guys, and I want to say, boo, happy Halloween, boys.
Take it. We'll take. Oh, it is Halloween today, isn't it?
Yeah, this
Hell
is a
yeah.
spooky episode.
Ooh, dang. We could have had like a spooky what is that? Phoenix in the back.
I
Spooky
dressed as
Phoenix
a
in the
realtor today. Whoa.
I dressed as a basketball player with a suit with one of his warm-up outfits on. All right. All right, ready for the questions?
Yes.
Coming to you, JJ. You ready for this? How do you recognize when you're living in the gray instead of trying to control everything? How do you recognize when you're living in that gray instead of trying to control everything?
Well, that's kind of a trick question, because if I'm trying to control everything, I'm living in the gray. I mean, if I'm trying to control everything, I'm living in the gray. because I'm making up rules. It doesn't, when I'm participating, when I'm participating and not, which means that I can have a notion, in input and opinion and energy toward a goal. Um, but when I'm trying to control things, man, I continue to realize it doesn't work, and uh, accepting that is grace, I think, for me. Um, Boy, that sounds like a complete answer that I don't have to fuck up by coming up with more words. you, you know? Um,
Nailed it.
yeah, I love you. See, this is what, Milan said. We really know. And us addicts are, I think we're just, I want to say gifted, but really it's cursed with this ability to make up a gray area, you know. And maybe the gift is that there's some creativeness involved, but again, what's am I creating the darkness or am I creating light? And
Love that.
am I creating more gray areas? And that really is. It's like, I ain't perfect, and he said that as well. The four absolutes, and waking up every morning and being aware of them. But then, what do I do when by 11:30 I've done stepped in my own poop? And I've been human again, and I guess, being graced with the awareness that you know for me, God's ever-present energy is there. But I also have come to believe that, that the ever-present darkness, bro, is right here, as well. And you know, again, to me, there's a grace and understanding that. Um, and then it comes down to my personal interaction. What did it say? This concept applies to both personal struggles and how one interacts with others. Um, to where I do have to forgive myself as a human being, that's grace in a gray area. I'm a human being, man. I'm in the gray area. This is the testing ground. Where am I going to go and just to have survived, the darkness, and and be able to understand Andrew's question, is that if I have taken the first step over and over where I admit my powerlessness, is that, no, God made me as a being that has energy and power. This is that I want to hook up with the intention, which is be in unity with the higher power. And my self-will takes me to places that uh, I really need to verify and check. So I'm complicating my answer. I should have stopped before. I love you.
I
I
love
love
you,
you, man.
JJ.
I love you. That was a beautiful gray answer, man. I love you so
Mm.
much. JJ, you ready? Milan, you ready?
Yeah.
How do you recognize, young man, when you're living in the gray instead of trying to control everything?
Okay, so I'm really glad JJ went first on that because I loved hearing his answer. But it also inspired some ideas in me on that, and so I have to take your living in the gray to mean living in the grace, because otherwise I would be trying to control the day. Like if I was living in the gray, I feel like I would be trying to control my day. And so I'm going to work off the premise that that's what you mean by it. And so, like I think that my only freedom comes from my surrender and my acceptance. Like because I have proven to myself and to others that when I'm trying to control the day, all it does is ruin my experience of it. Like it is it's my shortcut to anger, anxiety, fear, all kinds of stuff that when I look at my actions inside those shortcomings or defects, I don't like who I am. I don't want to be there. And and so I want to, if I'm gonna say living in the gray, where I'm just in it, I'm part of it, I'm not controlling it, and and I'm surrendering that, like I'm entirely ready to have those controlling defects and fears to be surrendered. And and so I think one of the feelings inside that was like yesterday's JFT was about courage and perseverance, and it takes perseverance to continually fight that fight against those things and put yourself in the line of trying to change those patterns. And that root word of the word courage comes from core, meaning heart. And so, you're doing things honestly with all of your heart. And I think that has something to play with grace. Like grace is like the coal that fires the steam train of courage, you know, and it helps me persevere. It's the fuel that gives me that faith and strength to take that step, even when that step is much more painful than returning to my old angry, anxious patterns. So, like I would say, it feels courageous, it feels liberating, and it feels free to be living in the gray in that circumstance.
Friedel, that was beautiful, man.
Freedom,
That was beautiful.
come to me, baby.
So I'm gonna bring this thing home. So
Yeah.
hashtag LLA. How do I recognize when I'm living in the gray instead of trying to control everything? Well, this is kind of where my head went with that question because it just our intro leads right into that, right? Like I used to live in black and white. It was black and white only for me. You know, I was either loved or hated, forgiven or condemned, that whole drill, right? And with that came control, right? On both sides. Like I was always living with the need to control outcomes and people, situations and all that stuff. So there was always a control aspect because there was always it was always the drugs. There was always getting money, beating somebody over the head, some means to an end to get my feeling to where I wasn't gonna feel like I was gonna die, right? Like I ultimately felt if I didn't have my drugs, I felt like I was gonna die, and I would do anything to not feel that feeling. And and part of that was not being able to live in the gray areas. It was literally what came with that was not being able to function in the gray areas. So today, when I can recognize that I'm living in that gray area, and it took a long time for me to really understand and what that meant for me, but I can feel it, man. I can feel it, right? There's a softness to my spirit. And it's not forced, right? There's less urgency for me to fix everything. And with that, there's more willingness, right? I find more willingness to simply like experience what's in front of me. I don't have this unwavering need to fix and control, manage the situation, right? I've got a softness going into it with my spirit is soft, right? And it's more conducive for learning, right? I can learn in those environments a little better, right? I'm not having to think process my way into learning something. It's just happening. It comes with less urgency. Um, when things happen, I don't react as fast to those things, right? I let it flow. I let the information come across my head and then I let it flow out. It's not so rigid in my taking of the information and letting it back out, right? I let it flow. I'm apt to more letting it flow. Um, I'm not forcing outcomes, right? I'm not trying to like manage other people's opinions and behaviors. I'm not trying to what is that called? What does it say when Sean tells me where you're trying to manipulate, like spiritual manipulation, right? There's no manipulation there. There's no manipulation on my part towards anybody else, whatever the situation is, right? I'm just letting it go. I'm not I can let things unfold, right? Instead of like writing the script every time. Because as an addict, I want to write the script every single time. If I don't know the end outcome of it, like I'm probably not going to sign up for it because I don't want to, waste a bunch of time if I'm not going to get what I need in the end. And that's typically and usually has been for years and years and years been drugs, drugs or something around that whole lifestyle. So living in the gray area is me just being able to be content, right? Like they talk about that in the It Works How and Why. Like we're going to be okay, like with or without the drugs, with or without the dog, with or without the car, with or without the money. Like like God's will for us is to be content, and I have to live that way. I have to live that. Again, this world is revolving all around me. I'm just a part of it, right? It's not Andrew world. I can't manipulate the world. I can't manipulate and manage what God has going on here, man. I've got to fall in line, and part of that is being able to be happy and content in those areas, being able to stay in those gray areas and not making it black and white. I can take a gray area and then I can make it black and white really quick by opening my mouth, or doing something out of context. I can make it black and white really quick, and y'all know what I'm talking about. We can make that situation ours as soon as we want to, as soon as we open our mouth, say something stupid or do something dumb, just to get a rise out of the situation. So I hope y'all, does that make sense to y'all? Like what I meant there, just living in that gray area, just being content, being happy, being cool with like what's going on right now. It doesn't have to be good or bad. I don't have to label everything as good or bad. I can feel sadness without thinking something's like wrong with me, right? I can feel sadness towards a situation, thinking and knowing that I'm okay still, right? Like I'm not a bad person. I'm not an asshole. I'm not gonna go blow the shit up because this happened. Like it's gonna be okay. And I can be patient. I can be patient with the process, not thinking I'm behind all the time, right? I'm not trying to like catch up to people all the time. Like I feel like I always had to catch up. I was always catching up to something because I wasn't enough. There's that mentality of like we're not enough. When I stop trying to control everything, right? That spiritual tightness goes away, man. I'm more calm, cool, collected. I'm not so restless. And that comes ultimately with that surrender process, man. Being able to surrender, surrender, surrender. This is a program of surrender, not self-improvement, man. I'm not improving myself. I'm surrendering all the shit that I have wrong, that I can't control, man. I gotta stop controlling all the outcomes. And I can live in the gray areas at that point. I don't have to fix everything. So that's my answer.
Love that.
Love you
J
guys.
double J, you got a question for me?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, listen, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but I got Halloween going on right here in my house because my lights have been going off and on here the past few minutes.
I
Um,
thought you were just a spooky guy.
well, I'm in the spirit of today, I guess. No, listen, I
Living in the gray.
see here it is.
Yeah.
No, I'm accepting what's going on, and if this is Halloween, I'm not scared. I'm not scared. No, but yeah, but for real, like this is all so freaking wacky and weird, man. Because we're going from the light, and in a few seconds we'll probably be back in the darkness, right? And that's
I only see gray. That's it.
well, I love you, bro. Listen, because I don't have a question for Milan, and I'm sorry I got so just
We got you.
caught in yeah, but I want to respond to what you said because I understand exactly what you said. I understand the question more and how different our experiences are, but yet, it's similar in definition. This, like the gray area for me has been, and I recognize it's a place of manipulation. I can now, with my control, convince you of, right or wrong, darkness or light, right? The selfishness, self-centered, attic in me, I'm taking us to a darker place than needs be, right? Um, what I so and in my thinking about this, um, what's Grace? Grace's part in the gray area. I love what you shared because the gray area, because this is part of what occurred to me. The gray area is where the the change takes place, where we have an opportunity to make a decision. I'm sort of seeing like your control issues were black and white, right? I mean, it's interesting, you know, and my control issues were in the gray, but it's in the gray, and our topic is grace in the gray area, because that's where the grace takes place. You know, and that's what you just described, is that you feel a place of grace where I do not have to judge black. I do not have to judge white in order to receive whatever it is I think I need.
It
Right.
can be a place of manipulation, but it doesn't have to be, right? Like what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's in my experience is the gray areas, and I will today. That's why, you know, making this topical now, like in my first reaction was my addiction was all about the gray. I'm gonna fucking trick your ass and make all my shit, you know, everything that's gray look like it's great, you know.
There you go.
And and so, you know, in life today, you know, that there was, yeah, the gray areas of how can I turn one of these things into um, a question?
You just made a question.
Okay,
Well, how can you turn it into a question? Was a question. No.
Okay, Milan, I put that to you.
Woo. Okay. I'm gonna say one of my questions now because I feel I was being a smartass. Grace in the gray areas invites us to live, Andrew, to live between black and white thinking and spiritual balance. How has learning to live with uncertainty strengthened your recovery?
Um, Say that last part one more time.
How has learning to live with uncertainty strengthened your recovery?
Wow. So uncertainty was one of those feelings like when I felt uncertainty, I would quickly just reroute and get to a place that I could be certain with whatever I was going towards. So being able to function and operate in those uncertain areas has been extremely important for me, man. It's been extremely important for me in my recovery. It's something that I think is absolutely necessary too, because when we come in here, the uncertainty is so vast. There's so many uncertain things when we come in here. And having people like JJ sitting us down and saying, look, you don't need to know everything right now. You got to just listen to learn to listen, keep coming back one day at a time. Let us love you till you learn how to love yourselves. You know, all those slogans, all those things that you hear and that unity that I felt was what really gave me the strength to handle those uncertain times, man. It's almost like getting thrown into a swimming pool and you don't know if you can swim or not. It's like you just get thrown in there, and by the grace of God, right, you get thrown a couple floaties when you're out there and you're trying to flail about. And that's that unity, that's those slogans, that's the camaraderie I felt when I came in here, being able to live in those uncertain areas. Because I was really uncomfortable, man. I think a lot of us when we come in here, it's all uncomfortability, man. I mean, just sitting in the back of the class, not hoping nobody calls on me, not knowing what's going on. But the strength and the love, man, the love and the hope that y'all gave me was gave me that strength to just overcome those times, man. Sitting in the back of the class being uncomfortable, opening my mouth for the first time, sharing, understanding what the therapeutic value of me sharing my shit was. So I would God, the grace, the love that I was shown when I got here. I saw humility. I saw all these things at work. No angles. Nobody was mistreating anybody, right? There was a structured way that y'all were like A, talking about your problems, B, dealing with the problems, and then you came back the next day and you talked about it again, right? Like, and then there was a layer to that. There was some kind of structure in this uncertainty, and y'all said it was gonna be okay. Like, you've survived your emotions so far, haven't you? Right?
Mhm.
Like when we get here, we have to understand like we've survived hell to get here. And so like we're gonna be okay if we hang in there and we just don't use, right? You can't use. Somebody's using off and on coming in here and everything's uncertain and you can't live in those gray areas. Well, I bet you can't because you haven't stopped using. You know, I implore you just Like if you want to get any of the stuff that we're doing, you got to stop using drugs, man. You got to get the all the chemicals out of your system before you can start simulating real things every day and having long days that you struggle, but you can still feel proud of yourself with, man. You know, you gotta be void of the chemicals though, man. That's the most important part of this thing here. And then you gotta when we lose, when things don't happen our way, like when we fail, which we're gonna fail a lot in here. What does fail stand for? First attempt in learning. We're gonna fail a lot, man. But it's about getting back up. It's how you conduct yourself when you come back and you pick yourself up, right? Is how you're gonna grow. So that's my answer. It's a little segmented, but
I love
I
that.
don't my answer. Love you.
J double J. Grace in the gray areas invites us to live between black and white thinking and spiritual balance. How has learning to live with uncertainty strengthened your recovery?
It has really forced me to surrender, to surrender to a power that I recognized in these rooms. I mean, in the community of recovering people, dying from a fatal disease, that, y'all had my attention. Um, I'm remembering, and again, doing the work. It's necessary to do the work. It's necessary. One of the gray areas, that seems to be in the community is, the use of maintenance drugs to get off drugs. It's a gray area. Is it a gray area or is it not? I know for me, being totally abstinent and working this program, learning how the program works by submitting myself to the step process. Um, in the AA Big Book, and I think I was 4 years clean. I was working with one of my first maybe cats in sponsorship. Um, and we were reading our 4 step and we were dealing with fears. And right out of the book, it says, and I may share this before because it's had a profound effect. Because fear is all about uncertainty. If I'm uncertain, I'm scared. And I learned so much doing my first 4 step of how much fear there was. And that's where um, my using was largely built around fear, uncertainty, you know. And again, it was an effort to control. If I could put enough of the chemicals in me, I felt I could control the situation and that I was in control. Um, we're asked to make a list of resentments, and then we're asked to make a list of fears, right? And the book said, well, we looked at the list and we asked ourselves, why did we have these fears? And I love this profound answer is with a question, Milan. And the answer to why do we have these fears wasn't it because self-sufficiency failed us? And, that was like, wow.
Self
Every
reliance. Self reliance.
self-reliance.
Mm.
Appreciate that. I've been
Mm.
misquoting that here lately because it's self-reliance. So, yeah, and that's much more to the point. Self-reliance, where I'm relying on my power, my energy, my knowledge. That's why you're scared, Bunky, right? Is that you're relying on your own understanding. And the, and that just that opens the door for the need of a higher power. And threw me right back into the third step of needing to turn my will and my life over to the care. So the black and whites, the challenges of life, the fears that come up, and you know, I'm sitting in the result. And I haven't really known what I've been doing except following my heart. And I appreciate that. if that's associated with courage, and courage is to feel the fear and go ahead anyway. And I could never do that. I mean, I used the chemicals clearly, right, to power up and like get from freaking A to B, right, and watch out, because here I come. I'm scared shitless, but I'm gonna puff up like a blowfish and do enough fucking drugs that you know uh, I'm not gonna feel afraid. And yet I was afraid the whole time. To go forward in my fears and the experience I've had over the last few decades um, are not possible without being open and in exchange with the higher power, And God expresses himself through the people that are in this life and death struggle for me, the creator gave us this to keep us alive and make the very most of the breath that we had while we're here on the planet, and not get distracted by the gray areas and lose precious moments. So um, I hope I answered the question with without faith, and it's by my faith, by extending the belief that there is a God, and I'm so freaking grateful that I'm in God's pictures. Thanks for the
Love
question.
you, JJ.
I love that. I love
Love you,
you.
man.
Okay, grace in the gray areas invites us to live between black and white thinking and spiritual balance. How has learning to live with uncertainty strengthened your recovery? You know, even listening to you two answer this question, I almost think the opposite is true. That my recovery strengthened my ability to learning to live with uncertainty. Not uncertain learning to live with uncertainty strengthened my recovery. My ability to live with uncertainty was shit coming into the program. And it was entirely my recovery that's even gotten me to look at my inability to live with uncertainty. And like I remember cycling on thoughts, like in the end of my addiction and in early recovery, where it's like I needed to know the outcome of some future event now. Like in order for my brain to settle down, like I gotta figure this out. I gotta figure this out, and keep like hyping myself into anxiety. Like even this spring, like my whole financial situation before we, had the great resurrendering of March 2025.
Woohoo.
But it was like that cycling, and that's an impossible expectation. I'm gonna sort this out now before I can relax. I'm gonna sort this out, like
Right,
I don't have
right.
a time machine. I don't have a time machine, so that kind of cycling is just useless. And it's through gratitude and surrender and bringing myself to presence that has really been the turning point of my capacity to live with uncertainty and to be okay with it. Like in fact, it's like much like my addiction, those type of worries now are like I'm putting on a shelf. Like it's like that is, if I have a visualization of surrender, it's like I'm taking something, I'm putting it in this jar so I don't have to smell its gross smell anymore, and I put it up on this shelf, and it's on such a high shelf I don't see it. And that feels like a good surrender to me. Like it's still out there somewhere, but it's not mine anymore. In fact, maybe I've even mailed that jar to Andrew, and he opens it up and he's like, "You man, keep your stinky jars." And then I sent one to JJ, and he's like, "Whoa, that's what Canada smells like."
I send back to sender. Send it back.
Yeah, but what if that jar smelled good to me? That's the deal. Like, what,
Good
why would,
question.
because sometimes we put a jar that smells good up on that shelf,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
right?
But I mean, as far as it goes for me, you can take all my smell of addiction and anxiety about financial troubles and
Right, right,
anger.
right.
You can have those jars, and if they smell like great to you, I'll keep sending them. I like free postage, COD
That's
included.
funny. That's funny.
It's like the
Priority
K-Tel
shipping. That's
records.
priority
That's
shipping.
right, man. I'll send it because the thing is that that is my mechanism for living with that uncertainty. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
that coupled with praying gratitudes for what I got right now, like what I got right now going on, and what's growing inside me, and the progress and the growth and just that connection, like I was talking with someone last night, there is no gray area inside my connection to the universe. Like either I'm straight and I'm plugged in, or I'm fucked up and I'm unplugged. Like it's like the second I would if I relapse, the second I do, I'm pulling that cord out of the universe and disconnecting. And one of the things that I was talking about with my friend Yosef last night was, isn't it incredible how fast someone can go from a like faithless, non-spiritual person to like a glowing spiritual being the second they're straight and trying to tap into the program. Like how fast you've seen miracles grow in people, right?
Yep.
I'm sure both
Yeah.
you have. Like
Yeah.
and that whole thing, like that thing, like us being connected to the universe, to me there's no gray area, man. It's like either we are straight and we have that spiritual awakening, and that like all of a sudden we're through a doorway into this other universe. Call it the fourth dimension, but there's like a magic happening there, and I don't remember kind of having a spiritual awakening. I remember it was like, when they say in the big book, the AA big book, rocketed to the fourth dimension,
I
it
know.
was like, poof, holy shit, like I am not where I was and I don't want to go back, you know? And
It's
and
beautiful,
and
man.
and quite frankly, that shift in consciousness was what helped me learn to live with uncertainty. Like my faith in that alternate consciousness and connection, because that, like, I was trapped in shame and guilt and anxiety. Like those were just places that were part of every single day, and they don't have to be now, I'm going to leave that
Yeah,
there. I'll
beautiful.
pass that to you, Andrew, for you asking JJ.
I'm gonna ask you, JJ, are you ready, sir?
Um, yeah. I had, Milan kicked a lot of stuff off there. Go ahead, bro. Ask me something.
This will be a good one. This will be a good one. So we'll get cut and dry on this one. Why is it so hard to give yourself grace? And how do you and continue to overcome that today? Ooh.
No, I've recently had some awakenings here. And sometimes, our process is amazing, and I continue to submit myself to it because I have come to understand that it's arrogance, that it's pride, which, what's that really mean? I have to define these things so that I understand, because what you're describing is the inability for me to forgive myself. What do I do about that? And I've come to recognize I am being arrogant. I can forgive you. I understand forgiveness. I understand that um, the past is done. To wallow in it is, again, it's a tool of the lower power. The cunning enemy of life wants me to stay stuck in unforgiveness. And so knowing all that, knowing that, being stuck in guilt, which I'm telling you, I am, uh, this, I've had just a recent experience relative to my second wife, you know, that the guilt that I lived in for, 19 years of marriage, right? Um, and it took me, 19 years to promptly admit that I was wrong 19 years ago, you know. Um, and my inability to forgive myself, as far as I'm concerned, any of us, if you can't, if I can't forgive myself, it's because I'm being so fucking arrogant as to think that I don't deserve it. Like so maybe I've heard that part, but then I need slapped with, I think I'm so special. It's not that I think that, oh, I really don't deserve it. It's like, no, prick. Yes, you deserve to be free. this disease would have me sit in a guilt. The disease is pride and arrogance, right? Because it cuts me off from this power that we're talking about. Like as Milan is describing, the grace, like, fuck it, man. Excuse me. I love your experience. And that when I read that rocketed in to the fourth dimension, like I went, okay, boys, like I'm ready to roll. But it didn't blow me up into the fourth dimension right there. It wasn't the Bill Wilson experience of everything changed. It wasn't a burning bush. It was just another element that went, okay, motherfucker, like I'm ready to be rocketed. How are we going to do this? And it's been a process, right? Because if I'd been rocketed, I'd have been removed. We would have been these two individuals that fought through, a marriage, trying to make it work, and um, there was there's nothing wasted in God's economy, and story isn't over yet. She's still alive. She hasn't killed herself, which is a miracle, because the disease has had its way with her, and but it's for the forgiveness, the inability for me to admit that I was wrong and then forgive myself. Like I could admit that I was wrong, but I didn't forgive. I lived in the guilt. Like, no, man. And it motivated action that prolonged a certain pain. It prolonged the pain because I was in my own self-will trying to fix, trying to fix her, trying to make, what started wrong. I tried to make it right against evidence. See, this is a gray area. This is a gray area. Milan said, because I'm thinking about, okay, so what happens to the person with 33 years freaking clean or 33 months clean, right? And all of a sudden, what gray area did they step into that resulted in them picking back up again? And where does grace come in? The grace of being brought back to the program. Um, you know, staying with someone who relapses when the relationship was born in recovery, right? This is what I'm saying. I some instances of what's a gray area, you know, being on maintenance. It's a gray area for a lot of people, right? Where's the grace enter? If I, do I stay with someone who relapses when our relationship was built in recovery, right? It was born in recovery. It was born in being clean. And my partner uses and picks up. What's the gray area? Where's the grace? Where does the grace affect that? You know, you know, uh, for me, like my statement was, no, if you use, this is over, right? And yet I've witnessed people whose love, or I don't know, is it grace? I don't know what, but it sustains life, perhaps, um, dating someone who is already using. Is that a gray area for someone in recovery? Is that a gray area for someone in recovery? Is that a
Could be.
black and white? Is that it could be? That's what I'm saying. Where's the grace in that situation? Is it black or white, Milan? You know, when does grace enter it? I have a beautiful brother, man, that's just blown my mind. We've been together for 37 fucking years, right? I've known him my whole time being clean. And I met him a year into my recovery. And his wife is a normal person. She's not affected by the disease of addiction.
Aliens.
But what a beautiful relationship they had. So again, like, it was that a gray area? Like, ooh, Richie, be careful, man. You might, what might happen. He's been graced with the decision making, with
Grace.
the life, right? Right? Where does grace show up? In the gray areas. Um, the gray area of somebody making a commitment to take on a service position and then not serve it. Again, maybe that's not gray, but at what point do you give them grace? Do you say, hey, get the fuck out of the way and let somebody take that position that's going to do something with it?
Do you recognize that grace wasn't given to them and their endeavors, right?
Yeah. 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 I don't know. The need for grace, is, and the reality of grace, the existence of grace, the evidence, you know, um, at what point I'm in a gray area and I'm trying to make decisions and I may make, again, if we're talking about gray, we're talking about black and white because those are the colors involved, darkness and light, right? And so I'm in a gray area, and grace is going to save me from, the death of the darkness. Um, Yet my decision may not be, um, as good as it might be. Um, but what's the role of grace in that? Um, so I ask you that, Milan.
Woo!
That was beautiful, JJ. Thank you. That really
Wow.
kind of opened my mind up. I was just sitting here just meditating, listening to you. You ready, Milan? So we're forwarding it to you, Milan.
Okay.
Why is it so hard to give yourself grace, and how did you, and how do you continue to overcome that?
Okay, so like this, first of all, I think JJ knocked it out of the park in the start of that one when he was talking about it being a lack of self-forgiveness. And it was part of my journey into the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book where they talk about pride. And thinking that you're the worst of the worst is still an act of pride. And it's just like there always seems to be some kind of it's like a psychological phenomenon where we can see for other people things working out, but for our own selves we can't see past the struggle. And it's and I really think that psychological phenomenon, I wish I knew the name of it right now, but it comes into play in this lack of self-forgiveness. And part of it comes back to the actual word grace, where, like, I think honestly, like, grace is us taking love to another depth, loving that bit more completely, that keeping no records of wrongs, being patient, being kind, and that grace with ourselves is us not like of keeping that record of wrong, of being impatient with ourselves in our own recovery and our healing process, being unkind to ourselves, even in the face of so many changes that we've made. We're not acknowledging like growth in the same way for ourselves as we would for others. Like when somebody gives me a compliment, I'm usually surprised that they have that perspective of that positivity. Like, and that shows me really like how far I have to go on my self acceptance and my own tolerance of myself. And uh, oh, okay. Well, see, it's been a couple weeks since we had JJ on, and I had this real massive epiphany last week about we're entirely ready, like step 6, JJ. And so I was walking out in the dark, and I had had something happened, a couple weeks ago with my daughter, and I think I mentioned to you on the last time we did the podcast about letting that go and being free. And then last Wednesday, 9 days ago, Andrew and I were doing a podcast on procrastination, and in the middle of it, it came to me that there was a lack of self forgiveness that was the main motivator behind all my procrastination, at least that I could deduce for myself. And I kind of got pretty emotional for me, and I got really kind of quiet for a little bit after that because it really highlighted to me um, how I wasn't loving and what I was doing towards myself at that. So the next morning when I was walking out in the dark, it came to me, and I'm doing my gratitude prayers, and it came to me that situation with my daughter and how it was like the actual like becoming entirely ready to change was my vehicle to being able to surrender, and that situation and relationship moving in a new direction. And so I was walking and I simply basically started praying for, like, opened my hands and was just like it, in an act of supplication to the universe. Like I said, please give me the willingness to start to forgive myself.
Mm.
And then I started bawling, and it was like, and I'm still walking, and there was no bears involved, just so Andrew feels at ease. But, but, but
Mm.
then it was like I felt like that willingness was there. So then I asked, to forgive myself, like help me bring in the love that will replace this lack of forgiveness, because I see that lack of, it's been a real journey upon that we're entirely ready. And so, that entirely ready means that first of all we bring about a three-dimensional awareness of what it is we're trying to surrender. Like I think we really have to see all the ramifications, all the directions of what something does, because otherwise it's like we're not entirely aware. How can you be entirely ready to do something? Like entirely doesn't mean kinda. And it's like, how can you be entirely ready to surrender something you kinda understand? Like, and I think that that's what the inventory and the amends and the prayer and the meditation helps bring all that awareness to the front. But then it's also like, okay, now I have to be ready to stop these comfortable bullshit patterns that are causing all this pain and blocking me from loving completely here. And so it's also being willing to step through the fire of forging new patterns, even in the face of everything we've known and built up in our life. Like so many patterns we do, I think, are highly
Oh no.
uncomfortable.
Oh
Like
no.
they're highly uncomfortable, but we do them over and over. Like sometimes, man, I can see myself shipwrecking a conversation with my wife and being like, whoa, stop. And it's like the words come out, and I'm like, why would I want to repeat that pattern? And it's obviously because I'm not entirely ready for that to change. I'm still holding on to like I deserve, so this is my response or whatever it is. And so the same with myself, where it was like I I need, like I'm seeking to learn how to love completely, but I'll never attain that if I don't have forgiveness for myself. Like, it's being revealed to me that it has to start here. It has to start here in order to move forward. Like that gray area of where, like, here's love completely at the top and here's where Milan is. It's like this is a gray area where I have to figure out what it is that I need to change, what it is I need to surrender, and I have to become willing to walk through the fire to change those things. So
You know,
those,
it's something.
and and that for me is my journey right now with self-forgiveness.
That's beautiful, man.
Woo.
Oh, it's so powerful, man.
So powerful, man.
It's so powerful, and as I relate to it, because again, this process can take decades. All right.
Hmm.
And it's because, in my opinion, fuck it, it's in my experience, man.
Yeah.
This disease of self-centered fear, of arrogance, right? Of self-will, to which we all have a generous portion of that. It's the battle with that and it lining up, because I'm p- part of my experience, right? Like this marriage that was conceived, it wasn't right. It wasn't right to begin with, right? And it's taken this long, and entirely. I love you. You know, there's just no accidents. There's no coincidence. There's nothing wasted in God's economy. Every moment, if I pay attention, and this is my experience, right? This podcast, this subject just fits in line. It's almost like, you know, God has scripted this whole thing for me, which I guess he has scripted my whole life for me. And I'm finally really seeing how if I just continue to surrender and pay attention, because you just gave me the peace I needed, right? And what he's been doing is making me entirely ready to be able to forgive myself. Um, Part of this process was realizing because, and I explained some of the situation to Andrew the other day, when without getting into it, it was very easy for me to blame my wife. I don't know if that sounds familiar to any addict out there that might listen to this, but oh, Milan, I just saw myself in your reflection. Um, but you know, because again, gray area, man, manipulation, right? Um, well, I realized my what I did, my actions that were wrong. I was inappropriate. I was inappropriate for me. Like I started my own ball rolling. You know, I can't point the finger, and like Milan just described, you know, I can't understand part of the situation and be entirely ready, you know, to surrender it when there's still work to be done, really, right? And so that's what the instruction is, and I've been doing my very best, and so being patient and the grace of I haven't used, um, there's you know there is so much to work with. I'm really grateful for the freedom that I get to experience today, you know, and it doesn't stop. These challenges, you know, there's been so much worthwhile about this whole journey, and forgiveness is essential. You know, it just really is, so it's that I can give the love that I'm intended to give, that I can receive the love, and that is through the grace of God. Well,
we t- we talk about
I,
as long as we don't pick up, we get to keep that DOC, right? What is that DOC, JJ?
It
That
it is it's the drug of choice. So like any drug addict should be interested in. So what is this? You got a bag of choices over there for me, bro. You know,
unlimited, unlimited.
unlimited. And it's amazing, you know, the fears that I've been able to live with and overcome because of the faith in this program and the faith in the process. It's just amazing.
I love y'all
Thank
so much, man.
you.
My cup is my cuppeth filleth right now. It's overfloweth.
Runneth
I'm
over.
I'm gonna answer this question, right? Is that
Yeah,
where we're
yeah,
at? All right,
yeah.
cool, cool. So, Andres, why is it so hard to give myself grace, and how did I, and how do I continue to overcome that? Good question, man. Y'all, man, this is why I love this podcast and just being able to come on here and let it flow and ask questions and get answers and get just pumped up, man. Y'all really, really just fill me up, and I just love y'all so much. But for me, I'll break this thing down. Like my whole life, I didn't think I deserved grace, right? I didn't know what it was, but I didn't feel like I deserved that action or that grace from it. I didn't feel like I deserved it from anybody or anywhere. Um, and that was internalized in me long before I even picked up drugs. I feel like as I've done some work on myself, right? And it was that deep, deep internalized belief that like love had to be earned, forgiveness had to be justified. Um, compassion was one of these things that was given to other people, not me. That's kind of like my core belief was coming into this thing, and that's just where I was at, right? And that followed me into recovery, right? When I came into the rooms, like that core belief in my or non-belief in myself that followed me. into meetings. It followed me into step work. It followed me into learning how to pray. Every moment that I looked in the mirror, I had to deal with that shit, man. And I realized that it was a lot easier for me to forgive other people than it was to forgive myself. You
Mhm.
know, um, when someone else would make a bad decision or a mistake, like I can understand, I could see the humility in them. I could see the pain. And it allowed me to empathize with them and understand and give them grace, right, naturally. But when it came to me, I felt like I held myself into to an impossible standard. A damn near impossible standard. As an addict, we have this, our mindset is off. We our standards for ourselves are so out of whack. Like we can't find comfort there. We don't, it's really hard for us to find comfort. That's why we look to substances and other people, other things to fuel us in that department. But and part of that comes from like the shame and the guilt, right? Like years of causing pain, doing drugs, breaking trust, disappointing people, right? Like I just felt like I was that dude. I don't deserve anything 'cause I've been doing the wrong shit. All these things I'm doing, it doesn't warrant me the ability to have that grace. I don't deserve it. And so internally, right? When it came to like other people, I would almost keep a mental scorecard of what I've done to people, so it wouldn't allow me to come to the table with anything to offer. I was already beat the fuck down as soon as I got there because I'm already realizing all these times where I fucked you over, I stole your money from you, I've not shown up. When I said I was gonna show up, man, I did that shit all the time, man. Man, like it makes me want to cry, like the shit that I did to my family, and they would still try to love me. They would still try to give me what I like give me love and still try to pick me up, even though I was still wrapped up and I was still doing that shit like in front of their face, like it was like I was just killing them, just doing wrong shit to them, being a really, really bad person. And but they still wanted to love me. They were giving me that grace. That it was grace in those moments that they were giving me that I can lean on now because I've done a little work on myself. Back then I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what that was doing for me then. And until I cleaned out and did a little work on myself, I can't look back at those times and be able to grab onto any good feelings of it, right? But now I can. I can actually learn and understand what was going on in those times. You know, um, so like today I still will act in those ways, but like I understand, and that little voice will hit me too. Like, see, you ain't changed. Like something will come up today, and it'll be like, see, man, you ain't changed. You ain't done shit. You still are where I thought you were, right? But then that's followed up quickly with like the truth is, you know, g grace is not about erasing the past. It's about transforming the past. It's about becoming a different person every single day and living with these spiritual principles as a result of working these steps, right? I'm going to show up differently. It's how I live today. It's allowing other people into my heart to heal me the same way that I try to encourage others to do, right? It's about living what I'm talking about, and one of the hardest things that I had to do was it's not about performance, right? Giving grace and allowing grace for yourself is not about how you perform. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how you feel. Like as long as you show up for yourself, like all you gotta do is show up. You know what I mean? I'm worthy because I exist, right? It's not because I'm performing. It's because I'm here and I'm actually showing up. That's why I'm worthy to be here, right? Like all that shit that I did in my disease was my ticket here. I paid the price to be here. And there's a vulnerability for accepting grace, you know? The vulnerability of still accepting I'm not perfect. I'm never gonna be perfect. And being okay with that. I gotta lay down the armor, man. I gotta lay that armor down. That armor where that self-punishment, and I gotta pick up self-acceptance instead. I gotta pick that acceptance shield up. I gotta lean into more acceptance. you know, and stop being both the judge and the prisoner in my own heart, man. Like I was the judge, prisoner, I was everything. I was the people watching. I gotta stop doing that. I gotta stop doing that. I gotta surrender. I gotta surrender this thing, man, and stop beating myself down. But it's really, really hard. It's really hard because I know what I've done to myself and other people, and it's really hard to like to just go, okay, I'm gonna give myself grace for those things, and it doesn't just go away. But it's how I live today. It's that living amends that I make to myself, doing the right thing for anybody, regardless, and especially when nobody's looking. It's how I know I'm a different person today. It's how I can come to the table and not have to think about that mental scorecard of me doing all the wrongs. No, it's because I've been showing up for 4 years now, this way, and living differently, and from the bottom of my heart, from the core of my heart, living differently. And that's how I can show people today, and I can lean into giving myself grace because I'm starting to do this, and it's been a little while now, right? And it's been working, and it's been feeling good, and people are starting to notice those people, those loved ones of mine that I thought I lost, I never get back, man. They're back because they know they finally, I'm here. I've arrived finally. You know, they didn't even know who I was 4 years ago. You know, so they're just grateful that I'm not dead, that I'm alive, and then I have something to offer today going forward, right? And they can have time with me, and we can love on each other. Man, that's what we're here for, is to love on each other. So I think that answered my question. I love you guys, man. I love
I
y'all a lot.
love that.
Love you too, man. Yeah.
JJ, did you come up with a question yet through all this?
I got
If you
plenty.
didn't, I got lots, but I'm just checking in.
What? No, I love you. And Andrew just identified another gray area for me because this is so much what this is about. And the gray area is living in the past, which the lack of forgiveness and the guilt keeps us in the past, you know, and even believing that I'm repeating the past when no, I'm not. The grace is being awake to the point that I am treating people better, I don't know, this disease of addiction and habit thinking, is that we can be in today thinking that we are still acting like I was, you know, in the past, and I'm not. And
Hmm.
and having to come current, Um, so that's just such a point of grace. But no, I don't have a question. I'm just looking for answers.
Okay. Then I'm
I,
gonna.
I wanted to say this to you guys, and y'all both are step guys. So there was a turning point in step 6, right? Like that you can, digging into those character defects, right? That you can that I remember feeling so defeated that it helped with that step 6 just becoming those character defects and really really understanding what those were and why I was that way, and that was just it helped out significantly, right? Like when I'm struggling with giving myself grace, I have to quickly remember like how far I've come.
Mhm.
And that's what we all need to do is realize and be proud
Yeah,
of ourselves for
yeah.
how far we've come in those times.
That's what I was talking about because I was hearing how easily the past just looms right into our present and clouds
Mm.
our thinking,
Yep.
and yeah.
I want to say one thing. It's really funny because, we're supposed to be living presently to consciously connect and that. But in order to do our moral inventory, in order to see what we need to surrender, in order to break free of patterns that we sure got to go back to the past a lot to
Right,
do that,
right.
right? Like we literally have to disconnect from our conscious contact in order to learn how to connect more frequently.
But it's
Like,
Yeah.
going like a reference. It's not like we have to live it again. We got to reference it almost.
Ooh,
ooh,
but
You know?
that's the change, right? I mean,
yeah.
and again, is that the grace? And I would say yes,
Mm,
because instead of this habit of just replaying and being in it again, it's recognizing to be accountable. See, and this is this experience I'm in right now as we're talking about it today, is for me to to realize that part that I played, which,
mm,
my arrogance, my denial, my effort to live out something, right? I skipped this very crucial action of my own.
Hmm.
Ability for me to entirely forgive myself now that I understand my part in it.
Yeah.
And it does take continuous. I love Milan's point. You know, in AA, remember it says we don't regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. But it
That's
does.
where that's beautiful. I love that because you're gonna grow
Mm.
from it. You're gonna grow from it. You're not gonna live in it. We're not living
Yeah.
in it anymore.
But that,
We're gonna
but
want to
that,
grow from it.
that's right, right. And the grace is understanding that.
Hmm.
But the guilt, again, the disease-driven
Pull you right
emotion,
down. Can pull
right?
you right into it.
It'll pull you right back to where because that's the wake up for me is no, this is over, over, over. Like all these things that the disease would have us, uh, replay the resentment, the re-guilt. Um,
It'll have us thinking we're still on drugs.
but this, well, we are on the drug without your drug. We're on, right? We're on an addictive loop that
Freedom.
yeah,
Freedom.
it's keeping us from freedom. So when we are talking about grace in the gray areas, man, to fucking continue to be specific about this, this is another one. Beware. Like, when's grace going to split the atom and all of a sudden help me realize that, hey, you're replaying that thing. You're so stuck, you are laying it on a current situation.
Hmm.
You're walking into this with the guilt of instead of being clean and current, and that this is really how I feel. I don't feel like, hey, you're just, you're another product of all the fucked up shit I did to all these people. You're one of them, and you know who I am, and all this bullshit is that no, I'm clean from that, and now you and I are operating from a place that I'm not hounded by or motivated by the guilt. I'm not making up for something that I've forgiven myself for. If I've forgiven myself, I'm not making up, you know, overcompensating, right? Because
Come on.
I'm going down another wrong path.
Yep.
Hey, it's beautiful, man. I mean, again, to think that, hey, I got this. I didn't use today. I got this. I'm going out. I'm going to run my life. I cannot, I do want to get far from this process of self-examination, reconnection with God as I understand Him, a humility with my own self, the ability to accept that I'm human, and that today is today, and that yesterday is a reference book, and
Hmm? Not your prison. It's not our prison anymore.
right on. I love you guys.
Hmm.
Love you, man.
Okay, we're at 38 after the hour, and I'm just wanted to check in on people's time availability before I ask a question here. What's going on,
Another
Andrew?
15.
And JJ?
I'm good till
Okay,
15. Yeah.
okay. So I'm just gonna throw 5 minutes on the clock or 4 minutes on the clock so that we make sure we're in time here for Andrew. Just trying to be conciliatory and loving everybody. Okie dokie. Andrew, here we
Mhm.
go. That
Yes.
true grace doesn't excuse behavior, it illuminates understanding. How do you balance compassion with accountability in recovery?
Oh wow. Compassion.
With
With
accountability.
accountability. I try to, having compassion, uh, like being accountable to myself allows me to be compassionate for myself, right? Like, and and be able to build compassion, right? I had to learn grace. I had to learn that living amends, that sometimes meant accepting that other people's healings was out of my control, and letting them be where they were. And that in turn let me be where I needed to be. And that was grace in the gray area for me. Um, when I find myself struggling spiritually, and I didn't believe in anything back then, I had to believe in and that the group was here and it was made for me, and that was a higher power of itself. Compassion is given my myself to understand like I don't have it all figured out. I'm not gonna have it all figured out, and I have to love myself enough to call somebody when I'm having an issue. Like I called JJ yesterday. My man answered the phone. You switched my whole mentality yesterday, man. Because I was just in one of those times, man. Like as a drug addict, even though we're not using, things can get really, really hairy and can get out of control and mismanaged really quick. Um, and just being able to reach out and that therapeutic value we talked about yesterday, JJ, is so unparalleled. Like I went to bed last night thinking about like how many people I had in my phone that was like we talked about yesterday, the most prestigious doctor that gets paid the most amount of money per hour for doing what they do specifically as it relates to this topic does not give me what you gave me yesterday. And
You
so
know,
if I got 200 of those in my phone, are you kidding me? Like it's like I'm to empower myself to have that like a phone full of hope dealers now, not dope dealers, man, not doctors, not therapists. I got a phone full of hope dealers, man, that give me anything, like just give me what I need. Compassion. Talk about compassion for myself, to stay clean just for today. We all greet each other as if we survived that same near death catastrophe, man. Like if we were in that same bus accident that almost killed everybody, like how close those people are, right? That survived that. But that's how we greet each other here, man. That's how we greet each other here. So you talk about like compassion. Like we don't run from our problems here, man. Because that's not a race that we're gonna win. We're not gonna win that race. But and we don't just start off have making good decisions here. Good decisions come from experience, right? But like experience comes from bad decisions, right? We're gonna make some bad decisions here, but it's how we learn and grow and how we can give love to ourselves when we do that. And we can't live in denial. Where denial persists, solutions cease to exist. So I do not live in denial anymore. What does denial stand for? Did not even notice I am lying. And we don't live there anymore. You know what I mean? It's not just a river in Egypt, JJ. Denial. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. So, sometimes what we're most afraid of, guys, is the very thing that's going to set us free. Right? So whatever that thing is that you're most afraid of, man, just go do that thing. Make efforts towards doing that thing and set yourself free, man. And I'm done. I've been running my mouth
I
about
love that.
stupid shit for long enough. I'm done. Love you. Love you guys.
Okay, J double J from West Virginia. True grace doesn't excuse behavior, it illuminates understanding. How do you balance compassion with accountability in recovery?
how do I balance accountability with recovery? I
No,
want you to,
compassion with accountability.
I want you to read the first part of your question because
True
I definitely
grace,
didn't answer it.
true grace doesn't excuse behavior, it illuminates understanding.
it illuminates. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
It's okay. It sounded like eliminates, and I'm going, wow.
Ooh, no, it highlights it with
It
light.
highlights it. No, there's no question that yeah, without grace, I mean, that is where the light comes from. That's just to me the very clear theme here is that grace is light, in a place of darkness. And then the second part of the question was, how does accountability,
How do you balance compassion with accountability in recovery?
how do I balance
Mhm.
compassion with accountability?
And I would say that this is mostly directed for about yourself,
Well,
Like,
being accountable to myself is the only thing. I mean, your
I love you
accountability,
so much, JJ.
your your accountability is your business. My accountability is mine. I got to be accountable
mm,
to me first, and really, it's interesting because I think we we visited this yesterday to a degree, and if I have to, my experiences and like I don't know how long it takes, guys. It takes admitting what we don't know and being aware of what God's trying to teach us in the moment. And in the very beginning, I think we talked about the effort of trying to figure it all out. And I related with that, having to have the answers first. I think you each said that in your own way. And um, what is amazing to me is as I keep learning that I have to be accountable for my limitations. When I go in thinking that I know, if I don't have a sensitivity, which really means starting with me, and I'm talking, where I experienced this was communication with an employee, all right, where I thought that I knew, and there's been a pattern. Well, I'm the boss. I'm supposed to know. I'm supposed to manage you and tell you about yourself. That's my job. And this particular situation, or whether maybe um, that doesn't work as well as what my experience was. Because when I was accountable for me, 100% owned who I was and my part in what I was addressing, I had compassion for the person, and and that's where and it was balanced. That's where the solution came from. You know, in other words, when I was trying to hold him accountable to himself, there was no compassion. And I can apply this to any relationship, any relationship. But I was forced to do this because of the job. Personal relationship, I may put that bitch off, you know, forever,
Mhm.
or until pain blows it up, right? Till ignoring it blows it up. Oh, is my time up?
Yes.
That was 4 minutes.
Yes.
Holy shit.
Mhm.
I wasted a lot of time really getting to the point where being accountable for myself, and I think that I finally said it there, allowed me, instead of holding the other person, telling them about themselves, right? It allowed me, it allowed us to reach a place where they were able to hold themselves accountable because of my compassion. Only place I got there was because I was accountable for my flaws, my part in the picture, all right, and that we're now on even ground, and that was balance, and that was grace. I really felt grace handle that conversation, and I've taken that experience into personal relationships. Thanks for letting me share.
Woo!
There is
Love
no
it.
wasted time in God's economy. You taught me that, JJ.
I love you, bro.
Love
Hey,
you, man.
listen, and I want to say this: whatever happened yesterday, bro, because I want to fucking cry. It had less to do with me. It had everything to do with you and me, but this power that is running the whole fucking show and wants us to understand we don't have it. We
Yeah.
don't have it. I don't have
Amen.
it.
Love
Okay.
you, man.
You called me and we accessed the power, and we followed principles that we're trying to put into our life. And that's where the balance, that's where the beauty, that's where the peace, that's where the love comes in. And I thank you for calling.
It
All right.
makes me want to cry,
Woo!
man. Every time, bro. I
Yeah.
love you so much, man. Need you. Big time.
Okay, true grace doesn't excuse behavior, it illuminates understanding. How do I balance compassion with accountability in recovery? So, it was on one of these podcasts where I learned the difference between the empathy and compassion. And empathy is understanding somebody's feelings, and compassion is having that coupled with the desire to help.
Mm,
And so I think for me, like I'm going to look at this for me because like me taking your inventory is there's no compassion there. Me making you accountable, like accountable to what? To my expectations. Like it's that this question was designed to be about me. Maybe I should have worded it slightly differently, but I just want to make that clear. But for me, it's like I'm still working on actually seeing how I'm feeling. Like I'm still going through the process of actually needing to inventory myself and get to my part. It's becoming easier and faster, but there is, there's some real stuff I'm hiding from myself. It was proved to
Mhm.
me on Wednesday when my daughter came out from some major surgery, and I thought I was all, like I thought I had positive expectations. I thought that I was completely like solid with what I felt about the surgery, about the surgeon, and the surgeon comes out and tells us, and I'm bawling. And I'm just like, okay, so evidently I had some built up tension that I was not being honest about to myself, you know? And, but the difference now is that it's like, am I beating myself up about that? No, I'm like, oh, noted,
Good.
move on.
Good.
Like, it's like, I know that I'm trying damn hard to do my part in my growth. I am like I'm trying as much as I know how to inside who I am now. And so when uh when feelings of like not quite making it, not quite doing enough arise, um it's really fortunate for me to have good friends, to have sponsors, and to be able to discuss things with people and see that hey, I'm actually am making progress, right? And it's like my understanding of my feelings for myself is 100% coming with a desire to change. And but what I realized from the last couple weeks adventure of my experience with this step six kind of evolving in me is that it's not everywhere yet. It's not like that. I can say I want to be free of stuff, but there's a lot of undiscovered country that I'm not ready to let go of yet. And and so, how does that pair with my accountability? Well, it makes me realize first of all, I'm human. There's some compassion there, but the thing is that it's like I'll take a deeper look at it. I'll be like, hey, what is it? What is it that's holding me back here? Because ultimately I know that if I'm failing to bring love into one part of my life, I'm probably failing to bring that same type of love into all my things. Like if I'm practicing my principles in all my affairs, I'm probably practicing my defects in all my affairs. And so like I'm probably just a little more diluted in some areas. So I think for myself it's just i'm I'm really happy with where I'm at, but I still have a desire to become better, and
Mhm.
and I'm okay with that. And I think I'm right at the end of my time. I'm man, oh man. Guys, I cherish every time we're together. I do.
I do too, man.
Yeah. Anything you want to wrap it up quick?
Yep, I want to finish it. Yo, you talked on arrogance earlier, JJ. Arrogance is the camouflage of insecurity. You ever heard that?
No, but I believe it.
And then I just want to say this: faith makes the thing possible. It don't make it easy. Remember that. And we talked a lot about grace today. What does grace stands for? Gratitude restores a conscious energy. What does it also stand for? Gift received and cherished every day. What does
Mm.
that do for us? It allows us to change. What does change stand for? CHANGE. Choosing honesty allows new growth every day. Come on, man.
Mhm.
Boom.
Let's go.
JJ, any final words before we sign off?
I just love you guys. I
Yep.
appreciate you putting up with me, and I love you guys are so practiced in this whole method, and I love it.
Thank you
You
for
opened
praying
up.
us in here, bro.
Well, I
I
love you
love it,
guys.
guys.
I appreciate
I look
today.
forward to our next one.
Love you, JJ.
Everybody out there, tune in
Love you,
next
Milan.
episode
Love
for
you
more recovery fun.
guys. Good to
Bye
see
bye,
y'all.
everybody.
Yeah.
Please help us help others. If you like what you've seen here today, please subscribe and share this podcast and help us get to 100 followers. We're looking for interaction with our audience. So please email recoveryfreedomrising@gmail.com or contact Milan South Okanagan Starcic on Facebook with questions, topic suggestions, or just comments. We'd love to hear from you.